Hi everyone! Before we officially get into our new fractions units, I want to take a little time to review some of the basics about what fractions are. So first of all, fraction we know is a part of a whole, and more specifically, this is a number that expresses equal parts of a whole object or a set or a group of objects. And that word equal is what's most important. When we're talking about fractions, all of the pieces have to be equally sized. So a fraction we know could look like one of these numbers here: 2/3, 1/2, 3/4, or 4/7. And basically a fraction is broken into three main parts. We have the part over the whole. So when we're talking about the names of the parts of a fraction, if we're looking, for example, at 1/2, we know that the part on the top is called the numerator, and the numerator tells us how many fraction pieces we have. Then the part on the bottom is called the denominator. I remember that the denominator is on the bottom because down and denominator both start with the letter D. And this part tells us how many fraction pieces our whole has been broken into. Finally, we have the fraction bar, and we're going to learn this year that fractions really represent division. So this is like saying 1/2 or 1/2. And we could also think of it as I have one piece when it takes two pieces to make up one whole. So some key words you'll hear when we're talking about fractions are things like halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths. And believe it or not, that denominator, the bottom number, is actually our unit. So kind of like when we're measuring, we have ounces or pounds or feet or inches. When we're talking about fractions, we have things like halves and thirds and fourths and fifths. It's just another way to describe the size of the piece. And finally, we have a couple different ways you might see or represent fractions. The first is we might see a fraction as a part of a group. So this fraction 1/4 shows that we have one out of those four counters colored in red. We might also see fractions on a number line. So for example, we might see 1/4 as one out of four sections on the number line. I can clearly see four different parts or sections on this number line, and one of those parts is shaded in. We could also see fractions as a fraction bar. These often look like the fraction tiles that you will use in class. And finally, we could see fractions represented on a circle. So 1/4 would be one out of four pieces shaded in. But the most important thing to remember is that we are talking about equal parts of a whole number or a whole group.